It was a delightful experience being in Washington, D.C. last week and meeting with leaders from across the country and even around the world who take the pro life issue seriously and who, like me, have made it the focus of their entire working career. But what emerged at those meetings is evidence of two growing fissures within our movement. And they're concerning to me at the very moment in which we need to be unified about who we are and what we're trying to do, both at the political level, at the grassroots level, pregnancy center, crisis intervention, and at my level, working around the world, we have these fissures that are growing within our movement. One of them is worse than the other. Let me take the easier one first. There is a growing debate even over the language of pro-life. Are we a whole life movement or are we a pro-life movement? The whole life advocates want to stress that we should see ourselves as a whole life movement because being pro-life tends to be focused narrowly on the unborn child. And of course, if you are pro-life, you want to communicate that you care about life at all the points on the continuum from conception to natural death. So one leader said being pro-life doesn't mean championing for the unborn life alone, but rather advocating for life at all stages. This is a pretty powerful argument. I think everybody agrees that life is valuable, full of dignity, made in the image of God from beginning to end. But this is really offered as a particular critique against the pro-life movement. Here's a particularly harsh explanation of whole life. The whole life movement, this writer says, seeks to purify the pro-life movement of its inconsistencies. A pro-life movement that ignores infant mortality rates, starvation, or the degradation of the environment simply does not deserve the label pro-life. Only a whole life approach can make the pro-life movement authentically pro-life. I think this is a particularly harsh criticism, and it basically is saying that you're a hypocrite if you stand in defense of the unborn who are legally being killed without at the same time advocating for a whole host of social and political policies that improve life according to that perception, whether it's education, food, maternity leave, and so on and so forth. What to think about all of this? I've actually come up with 7 holes that I see in the whole life argument. But I'm just going to summarize them in this taping by using an illustration, which I think is often more penetrating than all of the academic points. It comes from Scott Klusendorf, who is my friend and co-author with the book Stand for Life. And he gives an illustration that I just think is worth us processing. And I think it highlights the weakness of the whole life approach in a way that helps us resist the need to accept responsibility and burden and to spend all of our resources on a whole continuum of issues rather than to recognize that it's legitimate for us to spend our time and our money on effort in defending the one group of people in our society today that are legally being targeted for murder. He writes this: Joe found a young girl unconscious in her upstairs closet. By the time he got there, the structure was a raging inferno. No one else dared go inside. Scooping up the girl, he took his only exit straight out the window of the second story and into the bushes below. The girl lived. Joe sustained 3 cuts and 2 sprained ankles, and an avalanche of questions. The media wanted to know how he planned to pay for the girl's food, clothing, and health care now that he had rescued her. A pastor asked if time spent saving the girl from temporal flames might be better spent saving people from eternal flames. The social justice coordinator at a local parish insisted that if Joe truly cared about saving lives, he'd care about all life and spend equal time rescuing poor workers from rich corporations. The local congressman asked if Joe supported tax hikes aimed at reducing the fire risk. Joe's response? He just kept looking at the girl. The point is that rescuing the innocent from being intentionally killed is completely and fully and wholly legitimate all by itself. And if you are helping, let's say, people in the inner city who are poor and you're doing some supplementary education, for example, with an after-school program, nobody attacks you for only caring about life and children from in their junior high years or from the time of 3 to 5 in the afternoon. It's legitimate all by itself. You don't have to justify your action by also showing that you care about people who are sick, people who are elderly, and every other form of need. Why is it that only the pro-lifers are being called hypocrites? Because they're defending the unborn. And I think it's just simply because people are still wrestling with whether that should be a priority. And in my view, it is a priority. It's a preeminent moral crisis when people are being intentionally killed. And it's a preeminent crisis for us as the people of faith to make sure that we are responding according to God's word, which says, rescue the innocent and hold back those who are stumbling to the slaughter. Don't run away from this battle, and don't let people put a burden on you that God has not put on us. The call to rescue the innocent is already challenging, and we ought to stand on it as God's word and God's calling, and just keep on doing it with all of our might and effort. God bless. Thank you for tuning into these updates on how the gospel of life is penetrating into the neediest places in the world to rescue the innocent and to train up the church to be that voice. I'd really encourage you to join our movement to stand for life and to turn pro-life into a world missions movement. Please consider joining our support team, our prayer team. Visit PassionLife.org and make a donation today. I think that it will be very satisfying.